Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Day 2 at the World Manufacturing Forum. And we do have a very busy morning with a terrific lineup of global speakers. And we're going to discuss, again, tipping points, geopolitics, and the impact on supply chain, nearshoring, friendshoring, greenshoring. Then we're going to discuss innovation, how different sectors inside manufacturing are struggling or accelerating in terms of innovation, and what the best strategy and the best practices are. We'll talk again about talent, about the skill gap, and we're going to have a keynote speech from UNIDO, the United Nations Agency for Industrial Development. But let's start with the underrepresentation of women in manufacturing. Last year, we had the special report from WMF, and it was Cristina Ollón, that's Director of Technology, Innovation and Sustainability at SPRI, the Basque Business Development Agency, that presented the report, and we're really glad to have her back at World Manufacturing Forum. Cristina, please join me on the stage for your presentation. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you very much, the World Manufacturing Foundation, for giving me the opportunity once again to address this relevant topic of the impact of women in the competitiveness of the manufacturing industry. I don't have to tell you that the manufacturing industry is a key driver of global economy and in search of talent. And however, only 1 out of 3 people in the manufacturing industry is a woman. So the WMF expert group in manufacturing developed some years ago this framework for actions with the idea of addressing the impact of women as a matter of competitiveness. We adopted this statement from our key partners, UNIDO, that gender equality is not only a matter of human rights, but also a matter of competitiveness. And from this point of view, we have been working with this framework, as I said, where we defined that the strategic imperative is a huge cultural transformation that we need to do. So gender-based discrimination starts at childhood, and goes through school, universities, and the workplaces. And all of us, we need to change and make this change is really relevant, but yeah, a huge endeavor. So to address and to work towards this transformation, we define what we call 3 building blocks and 8 courses of action that work in the 3 stages of women development. It's in the access, in the promotion of women, and also in leadership. From SPRI, during the last 2 years, we have been working in getting data and researching about this idea of how women have an positive impact in the competitiveness of companies. Last year, we review in detail the work that we have been doing, and this year I would like also to share with you some good practices that we have worked with companies in the Basque Country with the idea of making manufacturing appealing. So just to remind you of the work that we have been doing so far, we developed a methodology to analyze the correlation between competitiveness indicators in companies and gender policy issues. So with this framework, we have proved the methodology with 2 case studies. The Basque Country case study with 474 responses from companies, and the European case study with a sample of 76 industrial companies. I would like to take the opportunity to thank EIT Manufacturing and Smart Eureka for their support in the in getting the responses from the European companies. In the case of the Basque Country, we saw last year how there is this positive trend where the most equitable companies are more competitive and have scored better in terms of increase in turnover, in increase in employment, and in research, development, innovation, and internationalization activity. Moreover, the most competitive companies show also greater commitment towards equality with equality plans, equality committees, and different measures to improve the participation of women. This year we have been working, we wanted to work with the basis that this data and research are really relevant, but we wanted to understand which were the good practices that we can learn from the companies that score better in our survey. In the case of this group A, the companies that are more competitive and the most egalitarian ones. With this idea of working with the concept of making manufacturing appealing. So we have interviewed the companies that appear in this slide, and I would like to share with you some of these good practices they have put in place to become this, what hopefully these models for other, like a motivational tool for other companies to address gender equality issues. So we started with this area of activity in access, that is to engage girls in STEM. It's very well known, it's a known fact that the small proportion of girls and women interested in STEM makes it very difficult for them to access a job market in a high added value manufacturing, where these disciplines are really relevant. So in these charts you can see, for example, that only 3 out of not only, just the opposite. Only 1 out of 4 of the female population don't even consider a career in the manufacturing. And in the case of ICT capabilities, in Europe, the number of men with capabilities in ICT is 3 times the number of women. So the companies that we have interviewed and we have worked with are really aware of their importance to make an impact on girls in a very early stage. In the case, for example, of EICA, is a small cooperative in the Basque Country that manufactures electric components for electric cooking with a workforce that is 52% female. The reason of this very well above average percentage is because EICA was created 50 years ago, especially to give jobs to the women in their area. It's one out of 11 companies in our sample that has gender balance in the production department. The problem that EICA is facing now is that they are evolving towards more sophisticated, higher added value products and processes in their company, and they are finding difficulties in getting women in these higher added value positions. So they are working with the local schools and also with the universities in the area, trying to promote this foundational idea that they have of giving jobs to the women in the area that is not, or they can improve the ratio of women in general. In the case of Glual, is a manufacturer of hydraulic and electronic systems for automatization in the companies with a 10% of female workforce, and they are celebrating every year open doors sessions in where they invite families and local people also to show the activity of the company. Most girls and boys that visit the company, they look for what they call the old man that is the boss of their parents, and they are very surprised when they find out that this boss is a woman. So this is really making a difference in their activity. Also, in the case of access, it's in our study we saw that the companies that are the most competitive companies have more balanced teams in overall the activity of the company. But as you can see, it's always around this figure of 20%. In the sample that we have been working with, these 474 companies, in this sample, 21% of the workforce is female. As you can see in this chart, 13% are female CEOs, and in general, women are underrepresented in all positions and departments of the sample, which we believe is a good reflection of the broader industrial community. So we saw how these companies or the companies that we have interviewed, they are really worried about this low percentage, and they are working to increase the women's employability. In the case, for example, of Sidenor, Sidenor is a large company producing specialist steels with an 8% of female workforce in a sector that is, in average, a 4%. So Sidenor has succeeded in getting more women than the average of the sector by working with the selection processes with positive discrimination towards CVs, feminine CVs. The cultural change that we need in this case is at both sides of the table. For centuries, women have been conducted to think less of ourselves, and it's very well known that we approach job applications in a more cautious way than men. So this is something that some companies are taking into account, and they are working with the selection, the recruitment and selection process in a different way with female candidatures than male candidatures. In the case of Engranajes Juaristi, as a small company producing geosystems with a 12% of female workers, this company is one in 19 companies in our sample that has reached gender balance in the managing positions, and they are working in the selection of their employees with targets for gender balance in each of the departments. So the problem is not only accessing the manufacturing industry, but promoting and thriving within it. So there are some studies that show how at junior level there are 33% of women, and these women are lost around along the pipeline of their working life. One of the reasons that we think it's relevant is the case of the equitable work environment. So companies in our study recognize that women pay more attention to the conditions for balancing work and family, and they are working with the idea of guaranteeing these conditions. For example, in the case of P4Q, that is a medium-sized manufacturing of IoT devices, with a percentage of female workers very above the average, they are supporting pregnant women with total pay from the 7th month of their pregnancy. They are also including in their selection processes a visit to the shop floor to show women that is an environment where they can find themselves in an adequate environment. For example, in the case of Arania, is also paying attention to the ergonomics of the jobs. It's a medium-sized manufacturer of steel also in a sector, as I said, with only 4% of female workers. Arania has 15% of their workforce is female, and they have analyzed that the workstation they were not appropriate for women, and now they have changed them to be appropriate for bodies from above 50 kilograms and 1.58 meter tall, which is, in their opinion, making a big difference in the recruitment processes. They are also relevant, the gender equality plans. So the most competitive companies in our sample have these equality plans. In Spain, it's mandatory for companies from 50 employees, although it's not something that is very common. For example, in our research and development funding program, we have found that 11% of the companies that should have an equality plan have not been able to benefit from the program because they are not compliant with this legislation. However, the companies that are most competitive in our sample, they consider the equality plan as a very useful tool that is helping them to create awareness, helping them to set targets and measure results. For example, in the case of Sidenor, as I said, is a company that has more female workers than supposed in their sector, and they implemented an equality plan before the law started in 2018, and for them it's a very relevant tool. The same in the case of our automation, a large cooperative manufacturer of automation and machinery control products, where the Equality Committee is gaining a strategic position in their company, although they told us at the beginning they found some resistance because, well, some colleagues thought that the initiatives are only meant for women, and this is not the plan. So all companies we have interviewed, they really told us they have to be very cautious with everything related to gender equality. For example, the case of the women participation in decision making, I would like to highlight this data from a study made in the Basque Country, where you can see that the percentage of female managing directors in the industrial sector is the lowest one in different economic sectors. But the companies, as I said, the ones that have succeeded in gender balance in the decision-making activities of the company, they have in some way establishing targets by departments mostly, and they don't want to talk about quotas because they think that it's not very well appreciated by female or male colleagues. But in some way, they are applying this idea of quotas in a different way, not directly, by setting targets by department, and also by promoting women in a different way that they do with men. In the case, for example, of Engranges Juaristi, was one of the examples that where they had good practices in the access of women to the manufacturing industry, and this is paving the way to have more gender balanced situation in the decision-making part of our framework of action. So I wanted to finish also sharing with you the results of the European case study. As I said at the beginning, we have 76 industrial cases to analyze, and we have run the methodology again with these 76 cases from 20 countries. And as you can see, the trend is again positive. It's proved this correlation between this positive relation between the contribution of women in the case of turnover, employment and growth, and innovation activity, and the other way around. We would like to enhance our studies, so we will be very happy. Please do contact me if anybody in the audience would be interested in supporting us with more case studies to enlarge the sample of the European cases. So some conclusions from my side. First of all, really relevant to keep on getting data and researching about the relevance of women in the competitiveness of industry. Relevant from our point of view to, in this search for talent, to address from the manufacturing companies' point of view, to making themselves appealing to women, in general to young people, but in the case of this study, to women, and to work in this area, we found that the activity of female role models that is working very well to promote in girls and women the activity of manufacturing. It would be very useful also the promotion of company role models. So companies that have, as the ones that I have shown today in the examples, they have good practices in the case of gender policies and gender strategies within their companies. And again, the idea that we really need a cultural change for a future where industry is not associated with gender. We need education, training, and professional opportunities to be empowered equally to boys and girls, to women and men, and we have to break these personal, domestic, and business barriers. So thank you very much, and I'm at your disposal.
Cristina, Jon, thank you so much. We're so glad to have you year over year. And in a nutshell, what's your final take? Do you see an improvement in terms of, the manufacturing world is starting to understand it? Is this a priority looking around?
Well, I wouldn't say a priority, but I see that companies start to be more and more, I would say, worried, or at least they are taking care of this, of the situation of their workforce, and there are some movements in this direction. So I think that, for example, in our case, the case of that there is companies are legally required to have an equality plan. It's been a very good idea to get a tool, an internal tool that give the companies a starting point to address the case of gender equality.
Absolutely. Cristina gives us every time very practical also information and hints. Thank you for sharing best practices and your data. Thanks again, Cristina. Jon. And as you know, the understanding that gender equality is a priority for manufacturing is growing. As you know, here in Italy, mechanical manufacturing are discussing the new labor contract, and inside, yes, there will be battle with the unions over money, but in terms of welfare and in terms of new practical measure to attract more women, this has become, and is absolutely new, one of the priority also of the discussion on the platform. So to me, it's a good sign. But how can we discuss talent if we leave aside half of the world of talent, so women? But talent is a tipping point, and we discussed yesterday the skill crisis. This is the topic of the panel that we're going to have now with Julianne Hess, who's Director Service Operation, Repair and Field Services at Bosch Rexroth, Jason Wang, who's Managing Director at Smart Factory Institute, and Simon Jacobson, who's Vice President at Gartner. And analysts, please join me on the stage and welcome. Let's have a round of applause to our speakers, please. And as we did yesterday, clearly, and you actively participated. There's the channel that's already open, the number you can use for question to our speakers. We're going to discuss the talent and the skill gap. But before, first of all, give us, in really 2 words, and starting with you, Julian, a brief description of your position and what you do at the Bosch Rexroth.
Okay. So, good morning to everyone. Brief description of my person and what I'm doing at Bosch. I'm a director for operations and field service in the area of industrial hydraulics within Bosch Rexroth, which is a 100% daughter of Bosch. So we are in the industrial area of Bosch. And what I do is taking care of every customer who's sending us pumps, cylinders, motors to repair, to send out technicians for the field service. And if we have some warranty cases, then I also take care of this. So this is my task. And before I had a lot of projects in manufacturing, was responsible for digitalization manufacturing for all the plants worldwide of Bosch Rexroth. So 18 years of manufacturing lie behind me.
Jason Wang, the Smart Factory Institute.
Yeah, I come from Smart Factory Institute from Beijing, China. I'm one of the 2 Chinese speakers to join such a wonderful meeting. My institute is not a pure research institute, but quite related to the topic of today. I can divide our task into 3 parts. The first one is try to open and teach courses in the university and the college towards the smart manufacturing and systematic innovation methodology. The other issue is to open and operate an incubator, which is try to help the young generations and even the experienced engineers to restart their business and find their strategy path to the future. And the third and the last point is to set up their ecosystem. I also come from China Science Automation Alliance, which is a SME ecosystem. And nowadays, we are now seeking the bridge between SMEs in China, also with the big giants like Foxconn yesterday and some leading international companies like IBM, Microsoft, and NVIDIA, so that we set up such an ecosystem to try to help the people to get more.
Fantastic. Different perspective. Simon Jacobson.
Good morning, everyone. I am Simon Jacobson. I work with a company called Gartner. Gartner, some of you might know, is a large global IT advisory firm. I am in a different group of the company. I'm in our supply chain research organization. And within that, I look after our coverage of manufacturing strategy. And very excited to be here, and if anything, honored to be here.
All right, let's start and go on the ground. So Jason, how would you define the skill gap from your perspective? What's the emergency there?
We know what the topic of today is not just the skills gap, but the crisis. The crisis means this issue must be done, must be addressed in an emergency way, and we have to find solutions to solve this problem in a systematic way. So that today our aim is try to find identify what is the real skills needed for the future, and how to find the approach to mix the gap and make the talent ready for the future. So that I think it's very important for today. Yeah, I hope that we can share some expertise and also best practice in this area.
Oh, well, Simon Jacobson, we're discussing this because in the industry, skill gap is perceived as a real problem. And yesterday, we had a discussion on this. But reading the Gartner latest research paper on smart manufacturing, apparently 22% of entrepreneurs that were asked about this said, well, this is not a problem to us. And 43% said, this is not such a relevant problem. And the main problem were integration, availability of resources, and re-engineering of processes. Did I read it right, or how do you read this?
Well, take a step back. We do a biannual study on smart manufacturing trends, and our most recent study, a pretty big one of just about 468 respondents, largely North America and Western Europe. And we surveyed both manufacturing leadership and supply chain leadership because there's a disconnect between those two. Now, to your question, 22% of the respondents, yes, they don't see this as a challenge. But that limited challenge is something which, quite frankly, appears in different ways. It's the amount of folks that see the availability of skills as a substantial challenge. And when you couple that with that limited challenge, we're looking at about 78%. And also, please do not interpret this as I'm a statistics freak. There's a bit more behind that. But when we look at that, 78% of the respondents see as a sum total availability of skills. And when we look at those overall challenges, whether it be cybersecurity, the overall integration challenges of different systems, processes, and then the change that goes with it, this is where that generation gap really gets exposed, because we're sitting here in 2024. And I'm willing to bet that everyone here has at least one cell phone, one iPad, one Kindle device. Yet the new workers that come into factories put those devices in a locker and go to deal with a completely different interface. And the ability to translate being a digital native into the factory and the ability to take that digital savvy and now bring that to the workforce is a substantial issue. It comes down to skills. It comes down to how manufacturing changes its relationship with learning and development. And quite frankly, it also comes down to how you involve middle management so that learning and development and upskilling does not become a distraction.
Well, absolutely. It's a combination of forces that are reshaping manufacturing. Yesterday we discussed demography, and clearly in some countries there's a lack of the young generation. On the other hand, business model is changing, and the automotive, Julian, is clearly changing a lot. And what's your experience at Bosch Rexroth in terms of availability of the talents you're looking for? How would you define the skills gap today?
At the moment, we honestly find still enough people for the most advertised job offers. But when you get down to really expert jobs or specialized jobs, then we also have to fight with other companies for the brightest minds. It's not so easy. Or if you look for engineers, for software engineering or AI, then it's harder to find specialized people. Or if I come back to manufacturing, for the shop floor, for example, I think we have to differentiate between very high automated manufacturing, where you can use a lot of technology and skills that are not so high qualified. So we have 3 different levels for qualification. And if I look in my shop floor at the service department, I need people that are very high educated. They take about 5 years really to understand all the products. We have 100 of products that come in, and they need to know how to repair them. They need to do the inspection, repair them, and make the testing. So we need very high educated people there. What we also see, things are changing from the profile, from the job profile. So also in our company, we have set up the BCAI for artificial intelligence. We have a lot more software engineers. We have 90,000 engineers working in development, and 50,000 of them are already software engineers. So you see, it's really a change to a digital, or the digital transformation is really happening. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been talking
we
for a decade of the
experts.
digital transformation, but today is the reality of all of the companies that are here in the room and connected. So what are, in your experience, the best practices to try to fill this gap and to provide the industry that has more sophisticated requirements, the talents that are needed? Jason, in your experience.
Yeah, from my personal point of view, we have to take a top-down approach, and then from bottom to top level methodologies to be combined this 2 ways. From the top down, we have to develop the so-called capability and skill model for the next generation talents. I have been working with several industries, for example, textile traditional industry, and the semiconductor industry, to develop their talent model. Traditionally, we believe that the talent must have such a kind of a model with two axes. So the horizontal axis is the so-called generic skills like communication, leadership, democracy, or something like that. And then we need a necessary vertical axis, which is the domain knowledge or specific knowledge required by that industry. But nowadays, we are doing the era of digitalization and smart magical transition so that we need another pillar that is very digitalized related. People have to train and find new skills from data acquisition, from data analytics to AI-related capabilities. So that is another generic, but another pillar not ready for the area industry. Also, we have another new pillar, which is innovation-related. That is, the people must have to face the more complex situation, more complex engineering problems in such uncertainty scenarios. So that the people must have to learn the new methodology and skills needed for them to solve such a problem, not just by their expertise, by their knowledge, but they have to grasp the new methodologies. So that is why we teach open such a systematic innovation course in Tsinghua University, the top one university, who is very famous in engineering and knowledge transfer, but the people there have no idea, no experience to do such a training, how to do for example, the data, the concept developing, the proof of concept, and find new ways, which is the most cross-domain related. So this is the new philosophy we have to teach to the students.
Simon, jump in the conversation from your standpoint.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where to start. I think there's a few things here. Digital transformation is a means to an end. And when we look at the way companies talk about digital, a lot of organizations might, at the enterprise level, put digital and business strategy in the same discussion. But when you come down into the factory, those are still two different factions to a degree. You have what's expected, and then the people who are going to do that. The challenge is bridging the gap here. And I mentioned learning and development earlier. When it comes to learning and development, it's changing the approach to this. No longer is classroom learning acceptable. It might be 10% of the time. 70% should be focused on learning by doing. And there's different technologies, immersion labs that can simulate or give people enough ways to say, OK, here's how I'm going to do my job, or test how they're going to do it. And we see a lot of machine learning and various forms of AI coming in. The trick is to have that information accessible to managers to start personalizing that training path and becoming much more agile. We have to understand how people learn. There are some folks who are much more innate learners, and there are folks who are much more experiential learners. And by innate learning, birds learn how to sing from other birds. Humans are much more experiential. I know for myself, growing up, when I'm told, don't touch that pot, it's hot, I had to experience how hot it was. And when we come into the factory, learning by doing is big. So we have 10 and we have 70, but that next 20%, this is social learning. And when we look at the new generation, we're talking about individuals, digital natives, growing up with cell phones, iPads, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, giving them those capabilities to network with one another, to learn differently. That's what's going to drive these experiences. And we see in our research is organizations that take that much more agile approach and not only take that social approach, but also now connect learning to earning with career pathing, they're likely to be 3 times more productive than other organizations.
Absolutely. And the coexistence in the factories of many different generations today creates new dynamics. But let's get back to your way of approaching the skill gap, Julianne.
Yes, how we approach the skills gap. I think there are two ways of thinking about it. One way is to collaborate with universities, with institutes, with organizations, for example, like with EFRA, as we do, to really get projects together with young people, with our engineers, to be a front of the new technologies, and to attract the new talents. This is something that we need to do. But also as a company of ourselves, we need to do, or what we do is, we have several programs for digitalization, for AI, We have set up this competence center also for training. We invested last year 300 million only in training measures, just to catch up also with the topics. And what we do also for the workers in manufacturing or for our employees, we set up like needed competences, what we need to have in the certain jobs, and we have competence matrices, and then we look, okay, what level kind of education or training does this employee need, and then we really set up the trainings for the people. And as I already said, it depends really on the job. Some things you can really get via training or via education, but many things you need to learn by doing. Yeah, training, it's training on the job and learning and be motivated to learn something new. So this is our way how we deal with this. And we also have young people that have 3 years of education, and then we try to keep them in our workshops and attract them. Yeah, and we have 8 of them. They are working in my workshop since 8 years, so they're really happy. It's really funny. It was the whole class, and they joined us there, and they're still there.
Yeah, well, and the change is accelerating even, and so there's also a big challenge, which is how to educate and train people, how technology can help this, and we discussed also yesterday AI and the impact of AI. The first question I received from the audience, and again, it's an open discussion, is about this. Should the teaching methods change to what are the key success factors to upskill the new manufacturing workforce? Jason.
I think toward the technology, especially the data and the AI-related technologies, it could be quite helpful to develop the talent, develop the courses, and even to provide the conditions or scenarios for them to make their practice in the manufacturing scenarios. But for me, I think the most important is to find a life cycle management systematic way to find the talent from the very beginning and how to use technology to develop the courses, to get them trained, get them coached. And then we have to help them to start up their own business so that they can provide their leadership and the help of the technologies. And then we must set up such an ecosystem so that the people or young talent have such an opportunity to use their technology to solve the complex problems in the real scenarios. So that for AI, not only it's essential for solve the manufacturing problems such as predictive maintenance and optimization of the operation, but in the training of the young talents, we can use AI to identify their performance in innovation-related tasks. That means we develop such a kind of a model, which is a talent innovation behavior model using AI and data tracking methodology. So that because the innovation works, most of them are such kind of a black box. The boss cannot see what exactly the engineers are doing. Right? Only to see the output, but the process completed a black box. We developed such a model to trace each step of engineering from their identify of the problem to solve the principles and they find the real solutions and get the principles. Each step can be traced and analyzed by the digitalized model. So that we develop such a kind of behavior model not only in the real practice, but during the process of the innovation. And through such a case, the managers of the human capital, right? For example, also the leading managers can know exactly how about the performance of the engineers and the innovators doing well or not well in their process. So that it's kind of a insight for them to provide more in-depth training course for the talent. This is our best practice, for example.
Simon Jacobson.
Oh boy, I mean, I agree with both the skills matrices as well as looking at the different technologies. However, we really have to break down the skills that are going to be required for different jobs and then match the technology to that. The other is when companies go to use a skills matrix, there's a bit of a knock-on effect of I now can have more than one person for a specific job, which means there's a bit of resiliency built in. However, if there's one thing that organizations that we see are thinking a bit more progressively in their approaches, it's really looking at it from the point of view of if we're going to use technology, it's not a matter of like traditional systems like an ERP or an MES where you can bludgeon them into a site, so to speak. These are organizations that view each site and each shift as its own culture, and they aggressively go after the what's in it for me, and they involve the workers in designing what that digital experience is going to be. Because that way there's ownership, there's engagement versus a risk of dipping capacity utilization because people are trying to learn how to use a new system.
Julianne?
I would like to jump on this because in the time as I was responsible for digitalization, I experienced that sometimes we decided, or also heard this from other companies, decided just to digitalize, yeah. But at the end, we need to be productive in manufacturing, and we need to get the people on board that they use these tools. So, and what you said, Simon, is that we need to look at the processes. Okay, what do we want to improve, and then think about the tools, what we need to use. So what we aim also in Bosch is we always have a human-centric approach. So we want to support our employees to get better, to get faster, to make the best decision. And then look at the processes, define what you need to improve, and then decide for the tool. And then get the workers or the employees on board. They have all the chance to bring in their own ideas. We have continuous improvement processes, so they can bring in their own ideas. And then you have them on board, and they use it. And then they are willing to train and to learn. And then it's like a self-fulfilling pathway, yeah? It's about technology and training, and the people are motivated really to get along with this. And it's, sometimes I said, you need not all the newest technology, but you need to combine human and the technology better and faster, because the revolutions are going faster and faster. So we have to catch up and be faster also in training. So we need to make really good decisions, what technology, what process to improve, and then give the exact training what they need.
Do you agree, Simon? Because she mentioned motivation, which is clearly a key not just for attracting, but also for retaining talent.
If I can jump back in, I completely agree, and it comes down to two things you're describing. One is that large human deal and how you drive that emotional bond between the employee and the employer based off the experience at work. And that trickles into training in terms of making people feel cared for, valued, and invested in. And when you have them driving their own experiences, that tends to work. On the flip side of this, though, it comes down to giving people the freedom to demonstrate ingenuity. You know, one of the things that I always struggle with sometimes is organizations are always looking for the best answer externally. Yet the smartest people in your company are often the ones right at the process that creates value for the customer. They just don't have the tools to communicate or to better understand or demonstrate that. And that's where we have such a huge opportunity. And I'll give you an example. A client of ours is playing around with generative AI. And the term playing around is from them directly. And they built for maintenance a large language model of telemetry data, all of their equipment manuals, engineering drawings, time series data, everything you can imagine that goes into the model. And what they're able to do is take a 4-hour task of root cause analysis, and now someone can do it in 10 clicks in 10 minutes. They've invested in making the employee's life easier. The employee feels valued because they've invested in that individual, and they're now able to communicate better with their colleagues. No one is showing up with the, here's my version of the data, or here's your version. So what they're indirectly teaching is soft skills and communication skills, not just the hard skills that everyone recruits for.
Jason?
Yes, I do agree that people were talking about skills and the importance and emergence of skills, but the basic of the skills is the capability we want to develop, right? We must try to identify what kind of capability set the new generation should be built up based on the skills training. But based on the capability, the other level is the so-called internal driver, right? And also the external pulling force. Yeah, we have to combine these two different factors to formulate such a scenario or environment to help the young generation to identify, oh, okay, the manufacturing is so beautiful. The manufacturing is appealing to me. And then I have such an internal interest to get involved in the manufacturing stuff so that we can have the encouraged to learn some specific skills. So that it is a combination of the next generation, new skills, new education methodology. We have to combine the hard skills development training with the software internal side next generation talent developing. Combine it together. This is my idea.
Julianne? Yeah, do you agree? And this is a question from the audience for you. And the question is, when trying to bridge the skills gap and attracting the next generation, a lot of people still view blue-collar jobs as inferior to white-collar jobs. What incentives do you use to keep existing people or bring in new people into manufacturing? It's a tough question, isn't it?
That's really a tough question. We have, as we said about the motivation, there are different motivations. You have intrinsic motivation because you love your job, you love what you do. Yeah, so then you need a good environment to combine your job, your family, whatever you want to achieve. Yeah, you need to have a perspective in a company. Yeah, and what we do is for certain jobs, you have a certain money, what you get for your job, and you have pathways to develop. So you can be a leader, you can go a project path, or you can be an expert in certain areas, and you have a chance to develop even from manufacturing. So if you start as a worker, I have a lot of workers, they started in the workshop, they made their technician, and then they went to a different white-collar job. So you have so many, or one of my bosses, he started also in manufacturing, and he studied, and he got his PhD, and then he was my boss in a central department for manufacturing coordination. So you have so many pathways what you can follow if you want to, and Bosch is really supporting this in Bosch Rexroth. And as I said, we give training, we try to combine jobs and what you need for time models and things. We really try to make it a good way of working at Bosch Rexroth, and I have a lot of examples of people who are working more years at Bosch than me, and I'm already working there for 18 years. So it was never boring. So many chances to develop. So I think we have a lot of incentives. That was the question. What we give to the people, and it's not only about money. It's more than that.
Jason and Simon, would you add something on that?
Absolutely.
Simon?
We were talking yesterday about small to mid-size organizations. And when we talk about the blue collar, I prefer to use hourly and salaried, because blue collar, I think we're past that. It has a bit of a derogatory nature to it. But when we look at the hourly versus salaried employees, in the pandemic, we talked about flexibility. Flexibility stops once you get to the hourly worker. And for a lot of small companies, I'm thinking of one plastics manufacturer in particular, what they did to not just attract but retain that hourly employee was, how do we offset flexibility? That means let's pay for lunch, we'll pay you for the full shift, not just the time that you're working and you get your hour for lunch, we won't pay you for that. They pay for the full shift. Let's front load your entire contract with paid time off. That way there's an incentive. We're trusting you that you'll take the time off, but we're also trusting you to earn it by doing the job we're asking you to. And then it's those career pathways, learning to earning, being able to understand. And this one company I'm thinking of took operations leadership, specific domain experts from parts of the factory, HR and learning and development, and they put together a first 90-day manual for every new employee. And what this gives them is, here's the jobs you can grow into within specific timeframes. Here's how you apply to what they call test up. And in the matter of a year and a half, they had 70 test ups, and retention went up 10%. But it's all about how do we design and invest in the worker. And the other piece to this is when we look at the university relationships, it's identifying where I want to access that talent versus the top-tier universities. There's nothing wrong with top-tier universities, but that hourly employee, you're not going to pull from MIT. They're going to come from elsewhere.
Jason?
Yeah, I think that we have the similar situation in China. That is the most brilliant talent. They do not want to come into manufacturing. They would like to seeking for the new jobs in finance, in biotechnologies, and some others, but no one talking about manufacturing. That is not because manufacturing is not important, because China is the leading one in manufacturing.
That's global, I think. That's common ground
sure.
everywhere.
But the young people do not want to come into our area. That's a big problem we have to face right now. So that how to solve such a challenge is not the question for the specific talent himself, but it's the problem of the whole industry. The whole, industry areas, yeah, like the big companies also we're teachings. So that I think we have to take actions not only by the HRs and by companies, but by every people involved in who recognize such the importance. So that my expertise is try to help the young generation to find the relationship between the manufacturing with whatever they are looking in the future. For example, in China, we are talking about the so-called future industries. That means we have to develop the new generation of new materials, for example, the nanotube or the carbon materials, and new transportation, new bioscience, new finance, new healthcare, right? That's the new next generation. That's the future industry. People want to seek some opportunities in these future areas, but I have to tell them that the manufacturing or future manufacturing is all about the base of all these future scenarios. So that you have to find the relationships and help them to get interest in what we are talking about right now.
That's a great challenge, and also manufacturing
it's a very big,
has
it's
to
nationwide.
Absolutely, and manufacturing has to start also communicating itself in a different way, by definition, connecting with younger generation. Final question before we go to the takeaways, and it's interesting because they are asking, attracting talent, you need to make a capability assessment and the roadmap about where the company is aiming to go. Any tip they're asking about how to make the strategy, the roadmap, because if you want to attract the right talent, you should know where the company will be in 5 and 10 years. Julian?
Yes, of course. We make our strategies, I think, as every company does, and then derive the roadmap and the pathway we want to follow, and then we look, okay, where we are standing at the moment with our employees and so on. And then we adjust this to the next years, yeah. So I think this is a normal way, but it's always good to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, it will not work out. So
yeah,
having a plan.
Yeah, having a plan in a time which is VUCA, as David Romero reminded us, so volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's difficult to have a plan.
Yes, but still. Even if you have to adopt it, it's always good to have one. I know that we live in a VUCA world, but I think this is also very important for the employees and for the future employees. They have to be much more flexible. They need to adopt a lot faster. They need to adopt to new technologies, to new situations. And in the last years, we have already experienced this. We had crises, we had Corona, we had different situations, and we have now economic situation which is not easy. Yeah, so we have to adopt. Yeah, and the employees, they need to go with us and not wait for somebody who's telling them what to do. That they have their own ideas. And what I experience in our company, that the people are willing to adopt very fast because they listen what is going outside, and they see the strategies and they follow with us. Yeah.
And the VUCA thing comes from the military, and the army response when the environment and the battlefield become VUCA, volatile, uncertain, is to empower people on the front line, giving them the ability to make decisions without depending on the traditional communication, command and control chain, which would take too long. And that would happen in companies during COVID, for example, when organizations had to face an incredible, unprecedented challenge. And this drives me to the final point, which is organization model. Do you feel like that also organization models should change, be more horizontal, for example, or different to attract and employ the better talents today, Jason?
Even though we can develop different kinds of models or scenarios for the talent development, but we have to keep in mind that we are talking about the skills needed for the future, not just for the current transition challenges. So that digitalization is important, AI is important, but what about 10 years in the future, or even 20 years? So that, I mean, the most challenging capability is how to face the future, facing the uncertainties and find some unknown knowledge to solve your own problem. That is the key issue, I think.
Simon?
I think the past 5 years have taught us we're absolutely foolish if we think we can predict the future, but we definitely can put plans in place to be flexible about it. And on one hand, it's going beyond the universities and down into the earliest levels of education possible, and teaching manufacturing, STEM programs, investing in those much more. That's what drives people to really want to do this. I have a 10-year-old who came home from her school library with a book for kids on aeronautics. And she said, "Dad, this looks interesting." And I'm the one who read it because she had no interest in reading it. It looked interesting. But that's one thing. You start at that young age. The second is, within the organizations themselves, it's looking at the middle management layer. We talk a lot about senior leadership, and we talk about the frontline worker. That middle management layer is getting squeezed. Someone who has 70 people working under them, how can they personalize training? How can they have the hard discussions? Focusing on enabling them, as well as succession planning, gives you that flexibility where people won't leave the company. They'll see the path. And as VUCA continues to unroll in the spirit of the military, you can continue to work the problem.
Absolutely. Great discussion. Thank you so much, Simon Jacobson, Jason Wang, Julian S. Thank you for sharing your vision and experience.
Thank you.
It was a great way also to open here the morning. And our next panel is dedicated to geopolitical shifts and global trade tipping points for manufacturing and supply chains. Let me introduce our speaker, Simone Marchetti, who's Business Development Manager at Oracle, together with Agustin Sainz, Strategy and Market Technology Director at Tecnalia Research and Innovation. And we have Dean Bartels, who's CEO and President at MTDG. Please join me on the stage. We're happy to have you here at the World Manufacturing Forum. Please take a seat.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Now, when we talk geopolitical shifts, you know, we're talking a very complicated world, which is split in blocks with wars, hot wars, cold wars, trade and tariffs concerns. And, you know, it's a very complicated world. You know, Dean Bartels, you were here last year. We discussed, manufacturing techniques, additive manufacturing, but here it comes to something which is completely changing the map of manufacturing. Let's think at the impact, first pandemic, then wars, on supply chains, from efficiency to security. And, you know, relocation, it's a global trend. How do you see the impact of manufacturing of geopolitical shifts today?
Yeah, well, certainly COVID-19 changed everything. Mm-hmm. And the supply chains were so disrupted. So companies really had to step up and try different things. So, for example, at the American Makes Institute, where we focus on additive manufacturing, as I mentioned last year, we gathered, companies together to respond to the desperate needs. I mean, General Electric jumped in and helped with making ventilator parts, and all the makers out there, the small guys, that had additive manufacturing machines, had to jump in to make different types of parts for the response for the COVID-19. And then you have, of course, the invasion in Ukraine that disrupted so many supply chains and all the conflicts in the shipping industry. So it's a different world. It's a totally different world. And I think that some of the newer technologies that are coming to bear to help solve some of those problems, everybody talks about AI today, But I think AI is going to be a big help because you'll be able to predict things much sooner, I believe, with AI once they get these models working the way they should work.
Oh, all right, we'll get more on that. August, in science, many things have changed. China used to be considered the factory of the world. Today, the strategy of manufacturer is China plus one, is de-risking, is diversification of supply chains. And you've been recently also in China. How do you see what's happening and the impact for companies like the ones that are connected here?
Well, it's quite funny because you are commenting that it's a factory, it's supposed to be the factory of the world, but more and more I think it's more related also with the talent. So it's not only the manufacturing of the world, but more and more I'm joining in a research center, so I'm really more related with the, let's say, talent value chain than with the materials value chain. And if you take a look into the past, I remember 15 years ago that we went to the US, to Carnegie Mellon Institute, to MIT, for looking for the new technologies for the future. Well, in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, this is changing. We have in Mexico, we have in Europe some sites that also we have in China, a research center. And more during the last 15 years, we are looking the change that they are producing there. And they are not only focused on the production, but they are focused on the new technologies. There's a sentence which was really shocked for me. I think that 5 years ago, we were landing there and we were launching a new research center there in Nanjing City, which is a big city there. And one of the guys, the companies that we were working with there, they were telling me, Agustin, we don't want the best practices. We want the next practices, okay? So it's not related to how to produce in a better way. It's how to create the future, how to generate the new technologies. If you take a look to the numbers in terms of the publications, papers, new graduates, I mean, that they are really producing knowledge. It's not really a matter of manufacturing it, but I mean, really they are producing talent. If you take a look to the past, I mean that in our relationship with the companies there, I mean that we were, let's say, working mainly with European companies for producing in a better way in China, for selling in China, but all over the world. Now more and more, the most interesting success cases that we have there, it's a, let's say, co-design, co-engineering new solutions with the people there, which is able to produce new companies or new products for selling there or for selling here. We are now working with, in robotics, in automation, in new robotics, in cable robotics, for example, new companies with new patents, which are co-designed and co-invented between both sides, and with new companies which are at the same time launching a new company there and a new company here in Europe, and we are selling all over the world. So I think that this kind of shape of factory of the world, it's changing so fast. Let me give me some numbers. I mean that China is producing 12 million graduates a year, okay? All the models are telling that for growing the GDP 1%, you need approximately 2 million graduates new. That means that they need to grow 6% yearly in GDP for not generating unemployment. So it's mandatory for them to grow with these kind of numbers. Otherwise, the talent that they are generating will be unemployed.
Absolutely. That's what we report day in, day out, looking at the numbers that currently are a little bit below 5%. So we shall see if the target will be hit. But let me get back with Simone Marchetti. Oracle is a global company. What do you see from your observatory, also given what we heard so far?
So we are very lucky because we can discuss about supply chain, manufacturing, many other topics with thousands of customers, companies that are spread all around the world. For sure, I like what Agustin said. Maybe all these companies are trying to reshape the future, considering that what happened in the past, maybe now it's no more valid. So taking try to bring in value from the past to the future is something very difficult, because it is VUCA. Today we are discussing about VUCA. So now it is a keyword for all of them. So everybody now is seeking for the innovation that can bring them able to remain at the pace of change, because in the recent past, not only because of pandemic or for wars, but also because the new digital models and so all the pressure that coming from new customers, new generation, they are creating this strong pressure, and they need for innovation. For us, so this is very interesting, because our role is to bring innovation on the market. So maybe the discussion is around how we can disconnect with the past and put innovation in the companies, especially manufacturing, in order to generate new models that can brilliant go in the future, also in this very tough period.
Yeah, and Dean Bartels, it's interesting because one of the hugest shift is that we're moving from a world of cooperation, and we know that invention, creativity, innovation comes from cooperation, to a world of more competition and even confrontation. And also, this is a concern also for the manufacturing world. And how do you see this, and what's the best answer from manufacturing groups? We're discussing relocation, nearshoring, friendshoring, green shoring. Saudi Arabia is proposing this as, let's do it in Arabia, they say, and then you can import things that are greener than yours, for example. What's your take on that?
I think the new buzzword that came out of this whole supply chain disruption is resiliency. Everyone talks about resiliency. You know, in the U.S., under President Obama, they set up this Manufacturing USA program, and now they have 17 different manufacturing innovation institutes. Now, these are public-private partnerships. About half of them are partnered with the DoD, half with the Department of Energy, one with the Department of Commerce. But each one of them is all about collaboration. So, you know, my company runs the very first one focused on additive manufacturing, but the Department of Commerce announced 2 new ones just this summer. So it'll be number 18 and 19, and one of them is called AI for Resilient Manufacturing. So here you have the federal government focusing on this concept of resiliency and how important it's going to be for all of manufacturing. But yeah, nearshoring, reshoring, onshoring, friendshoring, whatever topic you want to pick, it's a big thing. I mean, companies are looking to figure out how can we be more resilient. And one of the answers I keep hearing from companies is, well, let's bring it all back to the U.S. I mean, you know, I think other countries, I'm hearing the same thing. This idea of bringing things back, and because what we found during COVID was some countries, you know, clamped down a lot tighter than other countries, and that really disrupted the supply chain. So now companies are saying, maybe we need more control over our supply chain. Let's bring it all back into, you know, areas that we can make sure that we understand exactly what's happening. So I think that's another big thing going forward is this concept of transparency. You know, companies want to know where their parts are in the process all the way through the entire supply chain. Not only do they want to know where they are, they want to know as a part goes from machine to machine, they want to know exactly what the quality of that part is. So by the time they get your supplier packages parts to go to the next guy for assembly, they want to know exactly before it gets packaged, what is the quality of that part? So this transparency down to the machine level, I think is going to be a big thing in order to make sure you have this resiliency everyone's looking for in the supply chain.
Augustin Sainz?
Well, I think that transparency probably is one of the keys. I mean, that because try to control the process, I mean, that it's absolutely impossible. I mean, that there is a need of growth all over the world. So we cannot stop that. I mean, that try to stop with trades or with tariffs. It could be solved in a conjunctural way during a period of time, but not as a structural way. I mean, if you take a look to the history, I mean that probably going back to the basis, I mean that China was the year 1000. China, it could be around 22% of the GDP. Year 1500, it could be around 22% of the global GDP. 1970, it was only 7%. Now probably it will be around 20 or 30. So in fact, it's a way that it's not something new. I mean, if you take a look to the history, it's something that has sense. So we cannot stop that. So I think that try to introduce this kind of breaking the trade-free situation that we have in the past, in the last years, probably is not the best way. But it's true that transparency could be a different way of approaching the rule. I mean, I try to say, okay, try to block the trades probably is not really convenient for anybody. I mean, that we can take a look to the Russia conflict. I mean, that we have put, as a European countries, we have established some tariffs, we have some limitations, some restrictions, but I mean that the manufacturing Russian activity has grown, and there's other third parties which are taking advantage on that. So we have to be really careful with this kind of short-term limitations, because otherwise, I mean that we are blocking, and sometimes it's against everybody. So I think that I'm more and more convinced that there's no alternative. We have 1.4 billion people in China, 1.4 billion people in India. We have 1 billion in South Saharan African guys that they're going to grow, and they're going to have the same prosperity than us. And they have the right to do that. So I think that we have to find out which are the rules, the fair rules, but not to block. I mean,
perhaps you could advise President Trump, who is insisting on tariffs on everything.
Yeah. Personal thing. No. I mean, it could be solved in a short term, some of the problems.
I agree.
But then there will be more inflation. If there's more inflation, you will be with less importation. You have less importation. You have no money.
Actually,
so the dollar will grow up. So everything is
It's
connected.
not just Trump. If you close your eyes and you listen to Democrats and Republicans during the campaign talking about China, you can't distinguish, because the same tone, the same aim, and America, everything happens November the 5th, will be confrontational to China again and again.
You have to take into account that everything is connected. I mean, the politics, the economics, and even the talent movement of the knowledge is connected. So try to block some parts, it could collapse.
Simone Marchetti, from the Oracle standpoint, what is happening in the supply chain? How do you see the future of these supply chains?
So for sure, what my colleague said, this connection among all the different parts of the world is not creating value for nobody, because it's a very short-term approach. And in the report, I had the chance to collaborate with David and all the team to write the report for this year. We create a recommendation that is dedicated to collaboration. Without collaboration, it's not possible to be a real global supply chain, because now we are in a business where everybody has to be connected with everybody in the world. And we can not create value in the different parts of the world if these value chains are disconnected. From our point of view, we are a manufacturer, so as you say, we are a global company, so also from our point of view, supply chain, global supply chain is something that we have to carefully manage in order to create value. We have more than 100 suppliers spread around the world, so for us, having the chance to collaborate with all these suppliers and let them grow. Because if suppliers don't grow, it's very difficult to generate value all along the value chain. I like very much this word that is viability. Now we are talking about supply chain viability. That means it's an evolution from the create efficiency to create a way to let supply chain become something that can bring value. Before I joined Oracle 7 years ago, more or less, I was involved in procurement, and at the time, the only trend is create efficiency in terms of cost saving, and it's no more something that can work. Now we have to create this collaborative scenario in order to let all the value chain able to have an open discussion and create a business model that not closed because a single nation or a continent as Europe, for example, try to close because in the short term politicians want to generate value from themselves because now we are in this kind of situation. So clearly, then from our point of view, technology is enabler, is something that can enable communication, is something that can bring democracy in the supply chain. So this is key for
right. Dean Bart, yeah, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I would like to jump about talking about the collaboration. I think that collaboration sounds really, really well, but sometimes there's no fear for talking about competition. Sometimes we can compete. I mean, that really competing hard, but at the same time, in other kind of situations, we can collaborate. I mean, this kind of hybrid solution of sometimes we are competing, sometimes we are collaborating. I think that most of times in our experience is that it's the right way. With some of the competitors, sometimes you are really fighting with some of the customers, but in other cases, if you need a critical mass and there is another opportunity there, then you can align. And this is really a change of mind. But when we see some of our customers that they are playing that role, they are really winners. I mean, and you see that sometimes they are fighting like wolves in some order, and there's another quotation in that they are collaborating for fighting against the other one.
We know that on the market, companies fight like wolves, as you say, as far as they respect the rules of the market. Because as you know, for example, the Italian presidency of G7 this year has worked a lot asking China to respect the fairness of international trade rules. And we know China has an overcapacity problem at the time. It's invading. And Europe recently, just 5 or 7 days ago, introduced some tariffs on electric vehicles from China. So manufacturing and supply chain are exposed to some temporary challenges. Let's think to the Red Sea. We all hope that the war will be over soon. But on the longer term, blocs are competing. The US has reshored a lot of manufacturing. It's a completely different situation. How do you see this, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned before, there's definitely a movement to reshore things back into the U.S. But I suspect other countries are doing the same thing. If you want resiliency in your supply chain, one way that many people think to obtain that is through tighter control of your suppliers locally. Because in the U.S., there were lots of states, not every state, but lots of states that were pretty open during COVID, and people kept working. Some states, not so much, but some countries completely shut down. And it really disrupted. I mean, everyone knows about the chip shortage with automobiles, and there were so many automobiles sitting in the United States that didn't have chips. So you could buy a car, but it didn't run. You had to wait for the chips to come. So of course, what did the federal government do? They now have put billions of dollars.
That was a shock, and then the CHIPS Act came in the U.S. and even in Europe.
Yeah, so there's a huge movement in the U.S. to bring back the chip manufacturing and keep it in the U.S. to prevent that kind of disruption in the future. So reshoring is real, it's here, and it's going to have a big impact, no question, no question.
Right. One of the questions I got yesterday was, why should companies run to get out of these markets? China, for example, relocating, making shorter supply chain, while the demand will come from those markets. And he was mentioning India. He was mentioning also China, where demand will come from. Does it make a real sense to protect on the short term and to get out of some of these markets?
But when we are taking into account the data analysis, we have to look at the whole picture. I mean, that the whole picture, because it's not the car. Let's take a look to the numbers in the EV vehicle. China is going to produce 50 million cars a year next year. The local market, it's more or less around 20 million cars, which means that there's a 30 overcapacity cars that they have to sell over the world. So we can say, okay, well, we have a problem, so we have to put some trade limitations. Okay, but they have the 90% of the production of the raw materials. Last 3 months ago, germanium and gallium, which is the 90% belonging to the Chinese market, they have stopped a little bit the production of that, and the price has doubled. So if we want to produce, and if we want to have our own sovereignty, I mean that we have to take into account the whole picture, and we don't have the raw materials. So we can stop those 30 million cars, but they also have part of the materials, raw materials. So I mean that if it's a long-term approach, you can solve in short-term some of the sales, but not for the future. I mean that for the long-term future. Eh?
Right. Simone Marchetti, Oracle as a technology solution provider to the market. How are you moving in this environment?
So it's very tough, no, to move in this environment because we have many disruptions that are occurring. Clearly, also from our point of view, we have to change our role in the past 10 years. Once we were a software producer, so we produce software, we sell to companies, companies put the software in their servers and run, then we produce some update, some fix, and so our role is changed because now we are, so I like to say we are an innovation provider. So we embrace the philosophy of the cloud. With the cloud, we had the chance to keep in our hands our role in the value chain, that is produce new and high-performance technology in order to also be very fast in write new application that can enable the new process that now company has to put in place in order to try to face these big challenges. Because when we talk about collaboration, when we talk about the ability to be agile in terms of reconfigure, because this is a short-term strategy, this is something that was not possible in the past with the on-premise solution, where you have some customization that are very rigid. Now, with this new approach, with this new cloud application approach, we can incorporate all the topics that arrive from our customers, because as I told in the first question you put, we have thousands of customers. We have a connection with them, so we can hear about them, what they need to be aligned with the expectation of their customers, of their suppliers. So we can incorporate this in our solution, and so for sure, now we are trying to evolve more and more, especially with the rising of the artificial intelligence and the generative artificial intelligence. You can bring all the support to people that has to, for example, take decision in a very complex scenario, and then we can provide support to let our customers be more so have more confident to move to the process innovation. That is something that they need in order to also to seize the opportunities, because in this market there are many opportunities for who is able to generate new products, for example, or to be more connected with the youngest people that represent the next generation of customers.
Agustin, let me get back to the new map of manufacturing, because we know that international trade has not declined, but has changed. And if you look at 2023 was the first year when Mexico was the first exporter to the US versus China. That used to be until the year before. So this is just an example, but it's really significant. How do you see the next big changes or shifts in this direction?
Well, our perspective is that some of our customers, they are really analyzing now. It's not really clear. I mean, that there's no one solution. I mean that a lot of people, it's wait and see. Depending even the elections in the US, probably the relationship with Mexico could be changed a little bit. We were commenting that probably this could be chains and some of the companies, US companies and even European companies that are deciding if they want to go to US or even to Mexico, depending on the conditions. I think that probably the companies, well, depending on the size of the companies also, because it's not the same as SMEs, that the capability of discussion with some of the customers is not the same that if you are a big one. But I think that our customers, they are telling us that we should push on try to promote the multilateral trade agreements. I mean, I tried not to find out bilateral agreements in which probably our capability in terms of size of the countries and in terms of size of the trade amount of money that we are working with, it's not so good. So more and more they are trying to push us to promote these multilateral agreements. I mean, I think that in our relationship with some of the governments, we are trying to promote that. I mean, that to go ahead on multilateral agreements better than bilateral agreements. And my feeling is that everybody is waiting a little bit. I mean, that now the situation in China, it's also not only with the US, but also yesterday there were some movements around Taiwan, so the tension is growing a little bit. So not easy at all. I'm in 3 board of managers in China, in some board of managers here in deep tech startups in Europe and also in Mexico. And there's some borders that we are waiting. I mean, that it's not clear. I mean, that we should invest 10 million new factory in China now, or we should go to US or to Mexico, and everybody, it's really waiting. It's not clear, the decision.
Well, we'll know a bit more in 3 weeks, because, after the election, that Donald Trump loves bilateral negotiations when he can play his skills as a negotiator, while the Democrats, they say they do prefer multilateral, but then it's US first.
Well, my position probably is that, unfortunately, probably in 3 weeks, it will not be solved at all. And at the end, we will be in this unstable situation. And in our companies that we are working, I mean, that we are more promoting this kind of flexibility in terms of, okay, you never know, but which it's clear is that we have to be able to build and dismount really fast. That capability of being really flexible.
Is that the name of the game, flexibility, Dean?
Yeah, flexibility is certainly important, but I think you're going to see closer collaboration, no matter who wins the election, between the United States and Europe, and certainly between the United States and Canada and Mexico. But it's like a new world almost. After the invasion, everyone's starting to realize, we've been pretty lax on defense for a long time. And you're going to see a significant increase, I think, in collaboration between the NATO countries to prepare for that event possibly happening again. So the supply chain in the United States for defense has really shrunk over the last 20 years. I mean, significantly.
And you know this industry very well from the inside.
Yeah,
yes.
So there's a big movement now to try to bring companies back into the defense business. And as automotive might be going down somewhat, especially for component parts, if you're still worried about gasoline engines, if you're in the business of making parts for the engines, you're in trouble, right? But in the defense business, you're going to see, I think, more and more emphasis on nearshoring, but at the same time, collaboration with Europe and Australia and Japan. So the NATO countries, I think all of us have to figure this out together. So I heard you say U.S. first, but I hope not. I hope it's more, 50-50 with Europe. Time will tell, but I certainly have my own personal preferences on who's going to win this election and the impact it's going to have on manufacturing, but we'll see.
What doesn't make you sleep well at night, Dean Bartels? When you look at the world, is it Taiwan, is it the Middle East, is it, again, Russia and the war in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, Taiwan is certainly scary because, as the gentleman just mentioned, China was just having military exercises very, very close, which of course raises tension. President Biden and previous presidents have always said, we're going to be there for Taiwan if that ever happens. that kind of keeps you up at night if you're a U.S. citizen wondering if your sons are going to have to be deployed to fight a fight again. But it's a crazy world. I mean, it's as we see what's going on in the world. So how can manufacturing help? I really think we got to get more manufacturing companies involved in defense again, because there's going to be a huge need around the world, a huge need.
Augustine Sainz?
Yeah, I have the same feeling. I mean, that probably this nearshoring, it's clear for US especially. I'm not so sure if nearshoring it's so easy for Europe. Probably in terms of the capability that we have and the size of the companies and even the natural resources that we have, it's not so clear. Huh? So my point of view is more that Europe has to decide what is worthy, really. I mean, that with the whole picture. Sometimes we are looking at a partial part of the picture. And it's true that the US has a strategy that could be really helpful for them, but I'm not sure if we have the same ecosystem in terms of size of companies, in terms of natural resources. So probably, I mean that we have to be more flexible in some of the sectors. Our company is related with manufacturing now. We are really in a bad situation in terms of. Yesterday we were commenting with some of the companies here that, for example, the export license for China now from the last September is absolutely blocked. So they have blocked the licenses. So the market is really stopped. No? But at the same time, I mean that. The world is growing. I mean, that the GDP of the world is growing. It's 3.2. Europe it's 1.8. Well, less than that. Spain is 1.9. US it could be 2.2, but India is 5. I mean, that India is 7.
It's 7. India is
China is 5.5. So if we stopped, the rest of the world is running at the same time. So I think that we should be more flexible, because otherwise we can.
Simone Marchetti, are the companies you're working with flexible enough to prosper in a world like that?
But so you know that it's not easy for this kind of company to be real flexible. And so I don't want to seem too pessimistic, but I don't think that in the next future the world become very calm and everybody can continue involved in work as they did in the past.
Before.
No? I take a look every month at the global supply chain pressure index, and in the last 5 years the dispersion of the index tell us that we are in a very tough period with a high volatility of the market. So I think company has to transform themselves in order to be ready to adapt to these changes. Every day we have something that create pressure on the supply chain, create some kind of difficulty for companies that are in the manufacturing business, and not only. So maybe I don't want to come again on this point, but maybe all the company involved in the value chain, I think that needs to change their mindset and create inside of them innovation in terms of culture, in terms of also change the leadership model to ensure collaboration, to create some kind of competitiveness that can be shared all along the value chain. So clear for us as Oracle, we are a technology provider, and so we are very sure that technology represents an enabler that today is not. So you cannot do things without technology innovation, because you cannot implement process that allow to be very fast in take decision and change your execution in a short term if you don't adopt digital technology.
Absolutely, I do agree. We have to wrap it up, but I do agree that in an uncertain world, there's one thing for sure, which is that the world order that guaranteed peace and relative prosperity since 1989 to 2020, it's over. And we still don't have a new world order that will come out of what we're discussing today. It will take time, probably. We all hope it will be a peaceful world, but it's not to take it for granted. So getting back to what it means for manufacturing, for a takeaway, Dean Bartels, how can they look at the future of supply chain, of strategic plans, when they have to consider the geopolitical shifts has just begun, and probably we will see more in the future?
Yeah, resiliency, resiliency, resiliency. I mean, that is the key, right? So if you don't know for sure what's going to happen in other parts of the world, you know, you're going to have to figure out ways to become more resilient. And like I said, what I keep hearing at least, it's all about nearshoring, onshoring, reshoring, right? So I think you're going to see more and more of it. I really do. It's unfortunate because, you know, it's going to have an impact in some countries positively and some countries negatively. Certainly in the U.S., if there's a lot more reshoring, it's going to help manufacturing in the U.S. But we still have to maintain very close relationships with our allies. So I think there's enough work to be done that we can not have to bring everything back to the U.S., but we want to focus on the partners that we trust and the partners that are going to be there with us if there is, heaven forbid, some kind of a conflict. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping to see a lot more collaboration, you know, across the Atlantic with our European partners, with Australia, with Japan, and with the other countries that we know are certainly going to be there if the balloon goes up, as they say.
Thank you, Dean Bartels. Augustine Science, one interesting question came in saying, yes, you mentioned China, you touched on India, but you forgot Africa. And clearly, companies have to think at the world map in a different way. And Italy is pushing on the idea of the Mattei Plan, and the G7 has introduced the Mattei Plan, which basically is an investment plan in 6 different areas, which goes from energy to healthcare, from water to agriculture, but including industrial cooperation and education to use the potential and to deliver the development of Africa also through manufacturing. But your takeaway of this discussion, what can companies expect from this?
Well, a few words about Africa. I mean, that I'm really an Africa lover. I have been by leisure time in more than 22 countries in Africa. So I really know really well during the last 30 years the Africa movements. I mean, that there is a huge opportunity there. And there is a huge opportunity there. I mean, that the demographic problem that we have been talking about, that the gap, the skills in the gap, and I mean, that the number of passionate people there that we can take advantage on, I mean, that training them, helping them, it's really close. Really, a lot of young people. I mean, that this is really with the new IT technologies, we can collaborate in a easiest way than in the past, and we have to take advantage on that. I mean, that if you go to the numbers in the population, they are going to grow. Look at some of the countries that they are going to grow, and at the same time we have some gaps, and we are not looking at them. I think that obviously we have to work. I mean, that is not ready to explode. But I think that we have to take a look as an opportunity source of people. No? I mean, that's around Africa. And concerning the strategic plans, I mean, that resilience, I mean, that this is one of the key points, but probably the other, for me, key word, it's hybridation. I mean, that combine different ones. If I take a look to the last fast-growing companies that we have generated, all of them, they are with a mix of companies coming from all over the world. A new hydrogen company, they have venture capital coming from US, they have venture capital coming from Hong Kong, we have French companies and Spanish companies around robotics, we have Chinese company with European company, with some Mexican company, engineering company, so this hybridation is not easy, but I think it's one of the keys.
Simone Marchetti, your takeaway?
But so my hope is that also because this technology, as I mentioned, could be used by many companies all around the world. You don't need to buy too expensive technology. You don't need hardware. This can also help this kind of growing also in countries where at the moment we have young people, young generation with also for them the hope that in the future they can improve and enhance their life. We have many of our colleagues in Africa that they are selling our solution. They are producing value also for this population that now are suffering because the problem that we also know. So my hope is that technology could transform this world in a better world.
That's one of the biggest shifts. Look at the world in a different way, and Africa can be a great potential. Italian industrialists from Confindustria Alto Adriatico, from Confindustria Bergamo, just in the last couple of weeks, they announced projects already realized from Ghana to Eritrea and Egypt to educate people there with technical skills and to insert them here and to integrate in the manufacturing industries. That's just one angle of the development. But there's a huge potential, not just bad news, but also potentially good news for manufacturing. Thanks again, Dean Bartels, Agustin Science, and Simone Marchetti for joining the discussion
Thank you.
at World Manufacturing Forum. It's time for a coffee break, 15 minutes, and we'll get back discussing innovation.